Hello, hello. My name's Ratish. I'm currently one of the volunteers at We're the Black Designers. And can you all hear me okay? See me okay? Great. We have so much to cover. So here's the agenda for today. I have some pre-prepared questions for Carla. We'll kind of ask them over the course of like the whole hour, but like we did yesterday, which I think worked really well, as we're talking about a specific topic, feel free to plop some questions in the chat and I'll do my best to moderate and get to them when possible. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff around the business of design. There's going to be some similarities to some of the questions that I asked yesterday. However, both designers, both Carla and Chago, have such different perspectives on so many things. So I'm really excited to hear the difference in perspective. But there's also some really exciting stuff that Carla's known for. Freelancing, being a badass, making that money, right? And so we're going to talk about a lot of stuff about freelancing because I think that's on a lot of people's minds. And we'll talk about like how to build a client base on the side, atypical approaches to e-commerce websites, advertising. We're going to talk about it all. So like I said, please drop any questions in the chat if you all have any. And if you're comfortable, turn your video on. That'd be awesome, just so we can see everyone's reactions to all the knowledge that Carla drops. But if you're not comfortable, totally fine too. All right, without further ado, let me gas her up really quickly. She's a designer, multifaceted designer, an ACD at a digital marketing agency, super extensive freelance background. She's worked with Under Armour, National Geographic, DoorDash, all services and companies I'm sure we all have used and or worn before. Went to MICA, was an overachiever. What were you, on the dean's list like 3 years in a row? Something like that?
Something like that.
All right, overachiever. And what I think is really exciting, and we'll definitely talk about this throughout the chat, is that you're really passionate about partnering with Black-owned businesses and also helping other designers navigate the landscape and becoming successful freelancers. So I think we're going to spend a lot of time on that. So let's go. You ready, Carla?
I'm ready.
All right, you ready, fam? Everybody in the chat, everyone's ready to go?
I'm
Great.
ready.
So talk to me about your morning routine. What did you do this morning?
All right. So this morning, well, thank you so much to backtrack really quick. Thank you for having me. Thank you for such an awesome gassed up intro. It made me feel very great, including the fact that you reached back and got my MICA Dean's List info. Like that was a blast from the past. And I definitely would consider myself kind of an overachiever. So you're spot on. Super happy to be here. So what did I do this morning? My morning routine usually is just like, honestly, emails. I am an associate creative director in my day job, so I have the bad habit of just starting with like emails and Slack. But one thing that I have really started to work into my day-to-day is just taking a moment of mindfulness, especially like because I have so many irons in the fire. I've got a lot of freelance projects that are in progress and clients pinging. I think, you know, I'm learning by doing, trying to juggle it all and like still have a life. I'm working on practicing like moments of mindfulness in the morning before I get started on everything. I'm not always good at it, but that's the reality. So it's usually emails, you know, take a little moment for myself and just like meditate for a minute. And then of course, coffee, because I can't do anything before I have a shot. So that's the real. That's how I get through.
Now, if you have, let's say 20 emails and you haven't even brushed your teeth yet, you haven't had your coffee, how do you choose what email to answer first?
That's a great question. It usually, I will prioritize if it's like a personal client or if it's someone that reports me. I have now 6 direct reports. I have a new manager that I'm working closely with in my day job. So like, if it's people who need me, I try to prioritize that first. If it's just like drama, nah, I'll get to it later. But yeah, that's usually how I try to keep a people first mentality. So including like, because I straddle that world of like being a design leader at work and having people that need my opinion, need my feedback, or I also have my personal clients that are like, hey, what's up? Where's my project? I try to make sure I'm always talking to the people first. And then if it's, you know, just a client fire that can't be handled at the moment or other dramatic stuff that comes up in an agency world, like I'll deal with it later.
Got it. Now, we're definitely going to ping pong back and forth between your agency and your freelance stuff. So I hope you all are ready. So talking specifically about your freelance stuff,
Mhm.
what has been the most efficient way for you to land clients?
That's awesome. So, I mean, the most efficient way has really been through word of mouth, but I feel like it takes time to build that up. You know, you have to have networked in order to get the word of mouth. The word of mouth, like having a really great reputation in the freelance world, it means that the work is done for you. You don't have to go hunting. People will come beating down your door saying, hey, I saw what you did for so and so. I really want you to do that for me. But you have to start from somewhere. I think another really efficient way of getting clients is just reaching out. If you see a business, like one thing that I've started doing is I've been reaching out to Black-owned business owners and like just brands that I'm interested in and I feel like they could use some creative support. I'll find their owner on LinkedIn or I'll find their email and I'll just reach out. Like I'll just draft like a cold email. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. Are you interested? Having that like draft letter that you can just submit to people is a really efficient way of just getting people to know who you are. And once they take a look at your website, they can kind of decide on their own, hey, is this worthwhile? Is it worth me, reaching back out to this person? But having those prompts kind of ready to go, that's been really beneficial for me. I actually got a client like that a couple months ago. So
Nice, congrats.
thank
Now,
you.
what are some examples of some Black-owned businesses? Are they local? Are they national? Are there any specific names that you're comfortable dropping?
For sure. So two of them I have, and it's kind of been a pivot because I made the decision a little while ago as my own bandwidth got more and more strapped. Like you kind of have that come to Jesus moment where it's like, what do I want to do? What kind of projects do I want to take on? And it came upon me that I was like, I want to work on things outside of my day job that I'm passionate about. And it's okay if you're just taking whatever projects to make money, but sometimes you reach that point in your career, you're just like, I don't want to do that kind of work. I want to focus on this. It means something to me. So that's what really, and also the Black Lives Matter movement, like just being a Black creative and knowing the power of creative, I was like, I want to use my skills to network and help Black-owned businesses. So I reached out to someone in my network who is local, but it was their products were in national chain, obviously Target. It was Oyen Handmade. I reached out to their owner. I knew her kind of in my network here in Baltimore. And then another one is Heat Free Hair. The owner, Ngozi, is based in DC. I actually met her just randomly from a post on Craigslist. But all of this to say, like, I can't preach on the power of networking because really, like, the relationships are what open doors. It's these people that I've connected with and shown them my work and then just made the offer to say, hey, I'm available for freelance work if you want creative support in any capacity. Here's my background, and they've jumped at the chance to be like, hey, actually, I need somebody. So yeah, those will be the two most recently, and they've been really cool, really lucrative, awesome projects.
Awesome. Now, we have a question in the chat from Carmela. When reaching out to potential clients, does your approach change depending on the size of business?
That's a good question, and I would say moderately. I would keep in mind that if it's a small business, and sometimes you don't really know, but you can kind of tell, like a mom and pop kind of startup, they're going to want a more personal approach. If it's like a bigger agency, I might fine tune it. I would maybe have like two prompts. One of them that is a little bit more like personal, more low key, versus the other one with the super professional fancy words and all that other crap that might get your foot in the door with maybe a couple of gatekeepers that vet freelancers. I found the personal approach works really well, but that's because I've built connections to be able to reach the person who makes the decision whether they're going to hire me or not. I feel like if you have to go through several doors to get the decision makers to even take a look at your work and say, hey, we want to hire this person, you might want to have a different tone of your email. It might not be as conversational.
Now, what's the quickest way for any of the folks in the audience to get to the decision maker as quickly as possible? How do you approach that? How do you figure that out?
LinkedIn. That's been great for me, and social media in general. Like if you find that owners of, especially a lot of these smaller businesses, like their owners they tend to be heavily involved. If you find out on like their website or on their social media who the owner is, I would approach it that way. I've sent my portfolio to owners and those decision-making people for freelancers. I've sent it directly to social media accounts too. But I know that sometimes on LinkedIn, you've got to have a certain type of account, or you've got to pay to talk to people, that's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, social media is key for sure.
Now, do you have kind of like a fake LinkedIn profile, like a Finsta, but for your LinkedIn to stalk people, like potential clients? How do you do that?
No, but I feel like now that you're bringing it up, maybe I should.
Why not, right?
Right. I probably should. No, I've never taken that approach. I've never made a Finsta, but I don't know. Maybe that's a hack I need to try.
I don't know. I've never tried. I'm just spitballing here, right? I don't know anything. Something that is kind of interesting is when I'll quote unquote LinkedIn stalk somebody and just get on their profile, there's always like the thing where like they'll look at your profile too, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, you know who I am now. And so
yeah.
then that might be a good time to reach out, right? Instead of cold reaching out to them. So I like that. Now, how do you turn from a new business perspective, if a client tells you no, and it's a pretty hard no, how do you turn that into a maybe into a yes?
That is a fantastic question. And I will say that like client interaction and client interfacing it's a muscle and it's a living, breathing organism. I have never taken a hard no as like the absolute, okay, this person will never want to work with me. I've been able to turn bad client interactions into positive ones. And it's really all about how you respond and always keeping it on that you're not trying to sell them something. Like if you say you got a client that was like, hey, I just want a logo, but you go to their website and you know they need a brand overhaul. You want to come in as like an advocate for their business, as a trusted advisor. I wrote that as one of the books that I recommend. And really that's what I have learned about the business of being a freelancer, is that the angle that you approach everything, you can approach, cold calling and pitching concepts, pitching your business. You always want to come at the angle of being advisor instead of like trying to sell. So say they're like, hey, I want a logo, but you're like, you need way more than a logo in order to make your brand what it could be. I know this because of my years of expertise of working with brands, but you don't want to come at them as like trying to, oh, well, I'm just trying to sell you a website, because a lot of times they'll be apprehensive to like, okay, you're selling to me. You just want to advise and make sure that they feel comfortable. Like it's okay to turn me down. Like if you just want this, that's totally fine. But I highly recommend that you do this. And here's why. Like giving them the why and the insight, letting them know that you have that expertise has been a big game changer for me, because it creates that element of trust, where it's not about me and my bottom line. Like I don't have to sell you any type of additional service, but I'm coming to you as a consultant that's just here to partner with you to help elevate your business, instead of them thinking that you're just this creative that's like grubbing for cash and it's like, hey, just pay me for more stuff. So that has definitely worked very well for me. I think that answered your question.
Yeah, you answered the question and then some. We're going to talk about books throughout the next 40 minutes or so. I want to get to that in a second. But what I found is McKinsey Business of Design has actually published a report that says companies that have good design outperform their competition by about 2 to 2.5x. So that's a great thing to tell potential clients who don't see the business value of design, or they think they just need a logo and they might need something else too. So I would encourage y'all to Google McKinsey Business of Design report and you'll see it. Let's talk about books. So here's one of my favorites, How to Get a Meeting with Anybody.
That's awesome.
This is a really good one. The thing that I loved about this book, and I'm not getting paid by this author, this white author named Stu. I'm not getting paid by him. But something that I liked about this book was that it gives you a walkthrough of, if you end up cold calling somebody and they want you to talk to the secretary, personal assistant, executive assistant, whatever, what to say to them to get them to the next level. So there's like some pretty cool stuff in here. But tell me about another book that was on your mind. You had mentioned something.
Yeah, so something that has come to me, it came into my lap from my mentor, is The Trusted Advisor by, I'm imagining these are a bunch of white folks, Charles Green, David H. Meister, and I had to write this down because I'm like, there's too many authors. But the principle behind it, and I have not finished reading it, but the principle behind it is, yeah, in any creative partnership or any business partnership, how to position yourself in a client-facing world as an intersected partner versus coming to them like you're trying to, it's transactional, taking those relationships from being just purely transactional to being that value trusted source, so that they're like, this is the value of me working with Ritesh as a freelancer goes beyond just the fact of his skill set. It's the background of his knowledge. It's his investment in my business and making your clients feel like you're an invaluable resource. That goes far beyond just being like, hey, I've got a cool portfolio, please hire me. It makes you just like, okay, this is a rock star. Like you're almost an extension of their business and of their team. So I highly recommend it. And again, like I've been learning little bits and tidbits while I'm reading. I'm not done yet, but as I go along, just that mentality though has been a game changer for me and my freelance career, and being able to price things, being able to consult, being able to sell my ideas, being able to sell just like advice instead of design all the time. So highly recommend.
Okay, whoa. There's a lot to unpack here. You name like pretty much every topic I want to cover. So we're going to get to it. I promise y'all. Okay, so we talked a little about winning clients, right? And I think one element that a lot of designers try to do is differentiate themselves. And one of the key aspects of differentiation is your sense of taste.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, and I've seen this come up more and more, is a lot of potential clients will, maybe go onto my personal website or somebody else in the audience's personal website and want to see not only the projects that you've done, but also just like what's inspiring you. What are you reading? What are you listening to? Because you're not only just being hired for your sketch skills or your Illustrator skills or whatever, but you already are also getting hired for what you listen to and what you consume, because that could affect your work.
Absolutely.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. I think different audiences have more of an inclination to dig into who their creative consultants are, but definitely I feel like, especially if you're dealing with like branding, where you are setting basically the visual taste and aesthetic of a potential client, they're going to want to know more about who you are. And that it kind of leads into like having a good mix in your portfolio. I know I'm probably jumping around, but I have found that having a nice mix of the type of projects that you do have on display is imperative to getting the different types of clients that you might want to work with. Because if you only have, say that you've done stuff for like a big brand like T-Mobile or Chipotle or whatever, if everything in your portfolio is heavily branded, but you didn't do the brand work, your new clients have no concept of what your visual taste is. So you can have those big names in there, but you also want to have the type of projects that are heavily art directed and conceptually directed by you, so that clients can see what your visual aesthetic or where your ideas are coming from. So it's like kind of twofold. And then also having the background, like on my website, I talked about how I like salsa dancing just because I thought it was cute, but I mean, that lets people know part of who I am. And I agree to your point, like having those extra details to let audiences know who you are as a creative, that can help you connect with clients before they even get to meet you, because they're getting like little bits of you, out there in the wild.
Okay, let's talk money.
All right.
How do you make the case for charging an hourly rate versus a project fee?
Ooh, all right, this is good. So I think I submitted this one after we set the question list because I'm very passionate about pricing. So from what I have learned, the problem with hourly rates is that it punishes efficiency. So if you say to a client, yeah, my hourly rate for logo design is $75 an hour, just throwing it out there, and it takes you 1 hour to do that design, and we want to be honest, well, you just ripped yourself off, because the value of a logo to a brand is enormous. And obviously, like depending on the size of the client, they have a budget that's allocated for that kind of creative asset. But like a big monster brand that's going to go to one of the big branding agencies will spend like $30K for a logo. Obviously, we might not get those type of clients as independent contractors, but understanding the value of the creative that you are executing is imperative to the pricing. It doesn't matter how many hours you spend on it. It matters more what the value is and the return into the client. So for things like logos, where I've been using Illustrator for like 10 years. Like I've got all the hacks in the world. Or say there's a certain, maybe you do social media ads and you have all the hacks in the world. You're an animation beast. You can crank out those ads in like 2 hours. You shouldn't be punishing yourself by setting an hourly rate, because it's actually, you're cutting into your efficiencies that you've actually gained because of your experience. So what you want to do is make them pay you for the project. I think project-based billing is a lot better, and there's a lot of resources that you can use to try and figure out what's the right ballpark. Another hack for pricing is to just ask clients what their budget is. And if they tell you their budget, then you can kind of determine how much time can I put in? If they're just saying, oops, I think I froze. Sorry, guys. I always freeze in like a really awkward position. So sorry if that was scary. Some people freeze and they look amazing. I always look weird. But yeah, if they tell you that they have a budget, then you can kind of figure out, well, how many hours can I put into it? I actually set up a deal with a client last month that way. They told me their budget was $1,500 for creative. What can you do for me? I kind of calculated, all right, well, this is what I think they need, and this is how much time I want to spend on it. So I determined how much I was going to pay myself an hourly rate. I think that mindset really empowers you, and it keeps you from being taken advantage of, and it kind of protects you more from scope creep.
I love it. Now, I want to drop some knowledge. Here's one of my favorite ways to price it. Because sometimes when you net it out, I'm clearing, let's say it's higher than $75. Let's be diplomatic here. What I like to do is generally the questions I'm about to ask the company, it usually requires an NDA. Mm-hmm. I'll sign an NDA, whatever. I'll usually ask them, what's your revenue today? And what's your revenue after this redesign? What's your expected revenue? Mm-hmm. So if they're making, let's say $100,000 a year, and they're saying, oh yeah, with this rebrand, we're going to do this huge advertising campaign. We're going to expect, to go to $1 million that year. Well, that means they're making $900,000. I'm going to go as high as I can. I'm obviously not going to say $900,000. I would love to have that. But it really, arming yourself with those two pieces of information is helpful to what you're saying. It's helpful to help cost stuff out and price it out. And it helps you understand, it helps the client understand the value of design. Because oftentimes it's like the advertising folks get a ton of budget for Facebook ads and whatnot. And the art director and the creative director and the copywriter, whatever, get like this small little sliver. It happens in advertising all the time. So this is a great way to get yours. Does that resonate with you? Oh,
for sure. 1,000. Like, I've never heard of that practice, but I wrote it down because I'm like, I need to be doing that myself. Ritesh is dropping gems. Yeah,
if anybody wants to start an agency, let's go.
Right. Let's go. I think we've more than got the network to do so here.
There we go. We got Joseph, we got Denise, Keisha, Marco, Mitzi, like Olivia, we got Carmela, we got Ashley up in here, we got Candace, we got so many people, right? We can start an agency today.
We have tools to do so.
Now, yeah, see, everybody in the chat is like, let's fucking go, right? Let's talk about, you got into RISD yes, and you turned it down. What the hell's wrong with you? What drove that decision?
It was money. Okay, so and it was a big accomplishment because at the time this is playing into me being an overachiever. I was like, what's the best art school out there? So I went and visited. It was really cool. I did get in, but I also got into MICA and Tyler School of Art. And I just went with MICA because it was closer to home. I negotiated. So there's, let you know, like always, when it comes to money, always negotiated. I used my RISD scholarship to make MICA give me more money for my scholarship. So when they came up on the deal, I was like, all right, I'll just stay. It was closer to home. It was more affordable at the time, but yeah, it was a cool experience in negotiating. I always recommend.
I love it. All right. let me throw a curveball at you.
Right.
If someone is looking for a new gig, right? Let's say it's somebody in the audience is looking for a new gig, they need money, and the companies that are asking them to help them out are touting that they care about Black lives,
Mhm.
but they have nothing, they have very little to show for it. Do you take that gig or no?
That's a really great question. I mean, I'm gonna be real. If you need the money and you need to pay your bills, like you're gonna do what you have to do. I strongly encourage you, anyone facing this situation though, and just especially in this current climate, hold them accountable, because now that like Black Lives Matter and the blackout squares and all these businesses, like it's the landscape has gotten a little murky in terms of who's really about the movement and who is just like, okay, well, this is a trend, I don't want to be left out. So that's where I would be loud and proud and hold them accountable. Ask them about their diversity hiring, ask them about their like what are your initiatives, like literally hold the people that are saying that they're doing these things, like make them walk the walk and talk the talk. Like that's what a lot of folks are doing. I know Candace recently did that on an interview. Ask them about it. I've been in just seeing what else is out there. I'll look at like the team that who's sitting on these teams. And if it's all white people, I'm going to ask those questions like how many minorities do you have at your company? Like questions like that make them have to kind of check themselves, and it'll very quickly vet who's BSing for lack of a better term and who's really about making some change. So I think it's a tough call, especially when it comes to your livelihood. But in terms of it just being supplemental income and like freelance, I wouldn't take clients that I don't feel comfortable working with. Like there's so many opportunities out there. There's so many projects to work on. If you're not feeling the client and they seem like they're BSing again and BSing the movement, I wouldn't touch it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Now, how the hell do you do a full-time gig and also do freelance on the side? How do you make that work? Because I feel like a lot of people in the community are in that situation. How do you build a client base on the side?
It is challenging. We'll say a couple of hacks is that you have to be organized. And I say that as I'm learning by doing. Organization is key. A couple of things, keeping those two worlds separate. So everything that I do for my freelance world, I actually do in a separate browser, because I don't want the two worlds to be overlapping and causing me confusion during the day. So I do my regular work. Everything that I do for my day job stays in my Chrome browser, and I do everything for my other job, which is my freelance world, dealing with those clients, separate email, separate browser. So I can keep all of this information separate, because essentially you are acting as your own business. So if you think of it that way, like your day job is one business, but if you have a side hustle, you are a business. So all of those contracts and communication, a lot of times you'll be playing project manager. Keeping that world as organized and compartmentalized is really, really imperative, especially if you may fall into some territory with your day job where they're like, hey, you shouldn't be freelancing. Like a lot of people at my job do freelance in addition to the work they do. They are fully remote. It's really just honor system. Like as long as it's not impacting your day-to-day work, nobody's going to give you shit about it. Like, get your money.
Now, let's talk about taxes.
All
So
right.
speaking of compartmentalizing, I'm not sure if anybody in the audience knows this, but if you are working out of your house or your apartment and you have a room that's pretty much solely dedicated to work, you can write that off in taxes. So know that if you have space for that. So that's one hack. But I'm wondering, what are some of the general income tax issues that can come up during freelancing? What are things that might throw somebody for a loop?
That's a really great point, especially if you're like myself, juggling the two worlds where you are a employee, so you fill out a W-2, but as a freelancer, like, and there's a couple of ways to freelance. Like some of us just, hey, somebody gave me like $600 to do a CD cover or something. Like if somebody pays you cash, good for you. But if you're dealing with businesses and doing like large retainers or recurring revenue, or if you make over a certain dollar amount, I'm not quite sure what that is. A lot of businesses are going to give you a form to fill out. I think if I'm correct, it's 1099, but they're going to give you a form and they want your tax info so they can write it off. So you always have to keep in mind that this additional income might push you into another tax bracket. So a couple of things to do with that money, like you don't want to be blowing all of your money and not putting stuff aside for your taxes. Because if you get pushed into a higher tax bracket because you have a second business, you got side income, your taxes are going to be higher than you even anticipated for your regular job. So I always end up like, that's just the situation I've fallen into. I always end up owing whenever I pay my taxes, but I'm making great money on the side, so I'm not sweating it. I just have a savings to know that, hey, some of this money has to go to pay my taxes back, or Uncle Sam is going to come after you, and we don't want that. So something to keep in mind.
Got you. All right. Let's keep it going. I love everything that's happening in the chat. This is great. Talk to me about, okay, so how you use LinkedIn. Let's go back to that for a second. So first of all, why do you say Carla A instead of Carla Anderson? Because it's hella hard to find you on LinkedIn. I'll tell you, if I type in Carla Anderson, nothing shows up. If I type in Carla and wait for a second, you show up.
Really? Okay, I need to change that. I think that was just me being like weird about having my government out there. I don't know. I was just like, I'm just going to be Carla A on LinkedIn, but maybe I need to change that. If you can't find me, that's not good. Like, again,
yeah, I was trying to find you a few days ago just to do some additional research and whatnot. But yeah.
Wow. All
that's
right.
a hack.
Good.
So
I see
a few other people in the chat are also saying that they have issues too. But yes, please spell your full name because most recruiters will do that, and they probably won't. They won't probably want to take the time to like check out all the different variations. Now, how you share quite a bit of good content on LinkedIn. How do you choose what to share on LinkedIn? Because I personally, and maybe there's some folks in the audience who feel nervous about taking that step of like, oh my goodness, my entire network is going to see this. Whereas like Instagram, Finsta, like Facebook, people are less like curated. So talk to me about what goes through your mind when you decide what to share on LinkedIn?
That's a great point. I think I've gotten to the point in my career and with my network that I share things that I believe in. I share things that either make me proud or I'm inspired by this person or this, this networking event that is happening is going to be really powerful and really relevant to people that might not know about it. Like I share things from a place of authenticity at this point. Like if somebody doesn't like it or, oh, she's preaching about Black shit too much, like, frankly, I don't care. Really, I have people like in my professional network that also do follow me on social media. I think we just have to get to that point where we're not afraid of, you don't have to whitewash who you are on any network, be it a professional one or just low key social one, Tumblr. Like you shouldn't feel like you have to whitewash who you are just to get a job or just to network. At this point in the game, I feel like if anyone is going to, kind of recoil because I'm sharing certain topics, then maybe we're not meant to connect. I just see it that at this point, I want to share things that lead me to form connections with people who believe in this stuff. So
100%. All right. So designers oftentimes don't get input on actual copywriting when they're designing, though I know plenty of designers who have way better copy ideas than the actual copywriter that was put on the account. I've seen it multiple times. However, copywriters oftentimes have big egos. Sorry for anybody who's a copywriter in the audience, but it's true. How do you balance not bruising a copywriter's ego and sharing maybe a copy idea for like an advertisement or whatever you're doing? How do you balance that to make sure your idea gets sold in and the copywriter doesn't feel bruised?
Right. That's a great point. This has happened a couple of times for me on working on pitches and stuff. I tend to feel like if you prove your concept, like giving them feedback, copywriters tend to be like elitist. And if you're not a writer by trade, they're going to kind of look at you like, what do you know about where my comma is supposed to go? Like they are very, and no disrespect because they're experts. But if you have a bit of copy or a line of copy that you feel better connects with the visuals that you're putting together, that's what I do. I kind of stop before I go to the shareholders or go to the client with the piece, be like, oh yeah, sorry, I just completely nixed your copy with mine. I'll just go back to the copywriter with the piece, with my new copy, and say, hey, what do you think of this? I think getting them in the process, in the creative process, proving your concept and treating them as like you're consulting them instead of just like writing them off tends to make them feel a little bit better when you have edits. So.
Got it. Thank you. Now, what's a cool trick or a hack or something that you would like to share? Like Illustrator, Sketch, your workflow, something that you found that like just brings you utter joy?
Oh,
And
okay.
makes your workflow way easier?
There's so many. I feel like one of the best hacks in the world is just using Adobe libraries. I don't know if everyone uses them these days. A while ago, like we kind of made them standard at our agency, but Adobe libraries quintessentially just, it unites all of your assets across all of the platforms, which is really efficient versus like in the olden days, I used to have like, I think I'm frozen again. Sorry guys. Am I back? Okay, cool. Back in the olden days before libraries, I used to like have all of my assets and typefaces and styles and stuff saved to individual folders on my desktop, which is really slow and not efficient. But yeah, using Adobe Libraries is the biggest hack that I've used in a really long time.
Awesome. Who are some of your favorite Black designers who are changing the game?
Oh man, there's so many. One of them that I've been following recently, like I've been following people and looking for mentors for a while, kind of how I landed the mentor that's at my current job. But I've been following Walter T. Geer. I just saw that he just made a big transition to be like the executive creative director at a new agency. I'm really excited just by the folks that are that are shaking up the game and stepping into those leadership roles that we've traditionally seen held by our white counterparts. I'm really excited that the color of leadership is shifting, and it gives like, it's so important for us to see ourselves. So that's really like what I'm chasing. I'm reaching out to those people, just asking for a mentorship session or if they want to mentor me long term, because like that's where I see my career trajectory going. Like I want to have a seat at the table at my agency and be able to make game-changing decisions. And I'm learning from people that have broken through those barriers and are getting those opportunities.
Now, that's awesome. Now, what are some of your favorite websites and advertisers that you admire?
Ooh, okay, so websites, I'm all about design inspiration, of course. I use Muesli. Muesli is a really good one because it's got a plugin for your Chrome. So every day, instead of when I open up my browser, instead of like going to Google, I get design inspiration. Just that's what my browser shows me. And it's got like all different types of digital inspiration, typography inspiration. It's a really, really great one. Dribbble is good, but I find that a lot of the designers on Dribbble kind of have very similar styles. So it's important to me to like be in the mix of what's trending, but not so heavily like inundated that I can't design anything that looks different. So I like Dribbble, but I don't worship the Dribbble gods. Those three would be, and then honestly, Pinterest. I know everybody's on Pinterest, but Pinterest is really helpful in terms of inspiration.
Gotcha. Now we have a couple questions from the chat. If someone's never freelanced before, and maybe they got laid off or whatever, but they now have a high inspiration or gusto to actually start freelancing, what would you recommend that they do as a first step?
First step, I would take a good look at your portfolio and make sure that you have enough of a breadth of range of work to get you jobs. And that helps by looking at others' portfolios to just see the competition, see what's out there. Like I look at portfolios constantly and I bookmark like creative directors, people like all over the world. I bookmark like portfolios and digital agencies that I'm inspired by. One, because it's like, damn, it makes me want to like sharpen my knife. But two, it's a good sticking point to see like, am I up to speed? Am I like in the creative range of what is getting booked now? You need to make sure that your portfolio looks like the type of designers that are getting booked now. Because if someone comes across your body of work and it's either underdeveloped, there's not enough projects, maybe you designed only for print, but you're out there trying to get digital jobs, people believe what they see. So you really need to kind of take that moment to assess where you are, where your work is falling in the pack of the competition. Because if you just start cold applying for either jobs or reaching out to clients trying to book work, it might be a lot of fruitless energy because of the competition that's out there if you don't look like you're kind of up to par. So some of that might be making some projects for yourself, or just, tweaking some old projects. Like, it really doesn't have to be a huge lift, but definitely step one is making sure that portfolio is like in beast mode before you put yourself out there.
Got you. All right, rapid fire question time. Okay. So 30 seconds or less for each of these questions.
Oh boy.
And there's about 20 of them. So let's get ready. This is a question from the chat. Do you have any productivity hacks? I like using the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes on, 5-minute break. Do you have any others?
Productivity hacks. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I've heard of something similar. I've used a timer before. But really my biggest productivity hack, this sounds old fashioned, is just trying to stay organized. Because if you're not organized, it's going to rip apart your productivity. So when keeping client communication all in one place, keeping your assets all in one place, I use Trello. I saw that come up. Using Trello, I have that down as a resource. It's free. Making sure that all of your quote unquote shit is together. It'll really slow you down if it's not. So.
What do Black designers need to start doing in the workplace?
That's a good one. I feel like because they're rapid fire, I feel like I'm supposed to answer quickly, but I want to think about this. I don't want to tell people what they have to do, but I would advise you to not be afraid to speak up on the racial injustice and hiring imbalances and other toxic creative agency culture that has been long-standing and that is toxic. Don't be afraid to speak up about it. Like, I think at this point we are in a cultural moment where the accountability is an element in these agencies. So there are going to be some people that don't want to hear what you have to say. I say, I don't care. Like, I really don't care if there's some practices or if there's some things going on that are on some BS. Speak up on it. And then also don't be afraid to walk away from big brands or big agencies that are toxic. Like, I had a job at a certain global company. I won't name it because I don't want to slander it. Really cool opportunity. I learned a lot, but it was bro culture to the fullest and incredibly toxic. So I ended up walking away and I took a job at essentially a startup, and I was so much happier. So those are just a couple of things, like showing up as your full self and not being afraid to call out the BS.
Okay, let's talk about books we recommend and what we don't recommend, okay? So by the way, before I get started, I want to try something new. If I hold up a book and you want it, DM me and I will let you borrow it. As long as you promise to give it back to me and ship it into like a decent condition, I will let you borrow it, okay? Because I've read all these. So first off, a book that I do not recommend, worst $40 I've ever spent. It's called Graphic Design Visionaries. Whole bunch of white dudes. I didn't know that it was a whole bunch of white dudes because it was in plastic wrap. It was the worst $40 ever spent. Don't buy this book. If you want to learn how to pitch, The Art of the Pitch. Okay, love this book. This is a really solid one. If you're interested in freelance, and you probably have a bunch, Carla, I like this one called Breaking In. Have you heard this one?
I have not. I feel like that was a master list of freelance books that I recently came across, though.
Okay, if you could share that in the Slack sometime, though, where the Black Designers chat, I'm sure everyone would love that. But this one is basically interviews with a whole bunch of creative directors and whatnot, Wieden and Kennedy, Anomaly, whatever. Mostly white agencies, but the advice on what they want to see on the portfolio and what they don't want to see is pretty good. Carla, maybe I'll let you borrow this one and you can check it out.
That's awesome.
What else we got? This one's a good one. Dear Client. Have you heard of this one?
Dear Client. Nope.
By Bonnie Siegler. I recommend this one. This is a fun one. This one is basically just like a tip on each page. And it's a really quick read. I read it like on a subway train from Washington Heights to like Brooklyn. Any of y'all, check this one out. But yeah, those are mine. Do you have any?
Awesome.
Any others?
So I don't have them quickly surrounding me. I really wish I did. Actually, I do have my bookcase over there, but I'm not going to make you guys watch me run across the room. So I recommend the Freelancers Bible. I heard that was a really, really great book.
Oh yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah, I've only read part of it. So I'm one of those people that's like, press for time, give me the cliff notes and I'll go. I actually wrote down that I highly, highly recommend SipReads and Blinkist, because a lot of these platforms will parse all of the really great information from some awesome like creative, freelance, and leadership books, and they parse it down into either audio files or like really, really like 10-minute read blogs, so that you can get the information and go. So highly recommend those platforms. But the Freelancer's Bible, Stop Thinking Like a Freelancer is another good one. And then of course, like, again, I can't stress it enough, The Trusted Advisor is a really, really great book.
That's awesome. I heard this was good. I haven't checked it out, by these two women who run Chutzpah Design. They're twins.
Ooh.
And it's called Freelance Business and Stuff. People seem to really like it online. So if anybody checks that one out, let us know, okay? Anyways, sweet. Enough about books. What do you say if a client gives you confusing feedback?
Ask them to further clarify, or do you want to hop on a call? Okay. If you have time, again, especially in this age where everything's remote, you can fall into the trap of just wanting to do everything digitally, like let's just solve it via email. But client communication and those relationships are really where what can be make or break. So if they're giving you confusing feedback, why risk there being even more miscommunications when you can get on the phone or just hop on a Zoom call and get them to see you and feel you as a person and explain.
Love it. What's a skill that design schools don't teach that you think designers should learn?
Client interfacing. Client interfacing and creative strategy. It's definitely those two things, like getting to the bottom of how to put together creative strategy and brand strategy. That's not something that I learned in my traditional education. I had a great time at MICA while I was there, but make no mistake, like everything that I learned and became as a designer came from working out in the field and picking up things along the way. So I will say, like, especially as a freelancer, really knowing how to position yourself as that trusted person that's an invaluable resource versus, oh, this is someone that designs my social media ads, but I could find someone for cheaper. Because, there's so many creatives out there. There's Fiverr, there's all of these apps that are trying to basically replace creatives. But while those things are threats, make no mistake, there is no replacement for having someone with years of expertise, who has creative vision, who has all of these skills baked into one. There's no replacement for that. So making sure that you've developed those skills outside of school it's been really imperative for me in my freelance career.
Now, are there any situations where you would not feel comfortable charging anything?
Not feel comfortable charging anything. I mean, if I was dealing with a nonprofit, or, a charity, or if I were doing something for like a family member, like, and that type of doing favors and so that's a whole nother ballpark. Yeah, that would probably be the case where I wouldn't necessarily want to charge.
My worst nightmare is doing a garage sale flyer for my mom. She would be the worst client. She would want all the wrong things.
Oh man, yeah, it can be tough too, doing things for friends and family. That's a whole nother touchy subject, because sometimes they want a lot and you want to give, but they want to turn it into like this big thing. And you're like, I got clients, real ones that pay me. So those are kind of like case by case basis. Obviously, if your mom needs a flyer, you're going to do it for her, but just accept that she might not be the best client.
You want like Comic Sans and papyrus
Right.
and whatnot. Anyways, what's your favorite healthy and delicious and easy to make meal?
Ooh, okay. I'm going to be really healthy, delicious, and easy to make. I like salads a lot. That sounds really, really boring, but I make monster-sized salads, like enough for 3 people, and I'll eat it all by myself. It's very easy to just dump everything that's in the fridge, and, I can eat it while I'm working. So, yeah, I do a lot of salads.
Who's your favorite sister?
That is tough. Oh, Candace in the chat saying, oh, okay, well, Candace can be my favorite sister since she said I make good salads. Since she gave me a compliment. Okay, I'll take it.
Are there any projects or anything, any work that we can look forward to seeing in the future from you that you're comfortable talking about?
Yeah, sure. So I recently did a brand, like a creative strategy roadmap with Oyin Handmade, which is, you know, a local, like I said, they do ship international. I should stop calling them local. They were in Target, but they've decided to pull out of the retail spaces and just go direct to consumer again. So Oyin Handmade, I've been doing some design work for them, doing like digital stuff and overall creative strategy. Candace actually did a UX evaluation for them, so that was something that she and I partnered together. I recently worked on the rebranding of Heat Free Hair. That was through my agency, but it was actually a personal client first. I partnered with one of my designers that reports to me at my day job. We did that together, so that was really cool. I'm trying to think. Those are probably the two most like outward facing right now that you can see in the wild coming up. Now, I have not touched the Oyin Handmade website as of yet, so don't judge me on that. I tried to tell the client, like, you need to work on these things. But again, that's one of those relationships where she's in that place of trying to save money. So she wants to figure out what parts of elevating her brand can be done in-house versus working with me. And that's okay. Like, I came to her with the position, like, I'm here as counsel and I'm here to help support your business. And I highly recommend that approach, letting your clients know if you have additional services that you can offer them, but not giving them the hard sell, letting them know it's okay if you want to do it yourself, but I recommend, and this is why. So those are the two.
Now, with somebody like you who's go, 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 this is a question from the audience, which I think it's a really interesting one, is like, how do you make time to like learn new things and sharpen your skill set? Do you rely on projects to do that? And does that factor into like what you decide to take on? Like, you want a new challenge or whatever? Or do you set aside a few hours every month or whatever to learn something new? Talk me through a little bit about how you learn new things and sharpen your skill set.
I have more often than not, my new skills are coming from projects. I'm fortunate enough that at the day job, we do a lot of pitches for new business. So by being, you know, in the seat that I'm in, I can be like, hey, I want to work on that pitch. I tend to use pitches because they're, you know, it's not a client brief. It tends to be that we create the brief. I get to control the creative direction. On projects like that, I like to flex new muscles because I have full control of the project and where it's going to go and typically how long I can spend on it. I do also try to carve out time as much as I can. Like, I'll just watch a quick tutorial here and there. And I get that, like, especially if you're juggling your business and day job, it's hard, but you got to squeeze that time in. And I can't stress it enough because there's so many new people coming out that are designers. Like, you don't want to fall behind. That's the key for me, is like, I need to learn X and Y skills because I need to keep up with the competition. Like this, it's a highly saturated field. And if I don't have those skills, then I'm not going to continue to work. So I always try to find some time, but you do learning by doing. So I taught myself like keyframes and animation by working on a project. I think that's probably the most efficient way to learn. Got you.
Now, with all the busyness with you hustling and doing this and that, how do you make time for mental health? What do you do for it?
Take the day off. Take the day off. Also, I have a couple of things that I do. I was working like a crazy person a couple years ago when I first landed my remote job that ended up, you know, had me end up where I am now. I was working like a crazy person, like trying to prove myself, not having a social life, really just like having a glass of wine every day at the end of the day, working really long hours. And it dawned on me that the work never stops, and that if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to do the work that I love. Like, I won't be able to be a creative if I'm not healthy and happy. So I created this mentality in myself, and I try to share that with Candace, who's a workaholic too, and the people that I work with at my day job. I'm like, you have to come first. I think that's important for us, like especially those who have that hustle mentality. You have to protect yourself. So some things that I do, I make it mandatory. Like, I have to get my exercise in. I don't care about it if I have a deadline. I'm working out. 30 minutes out of the entire day is not going to kill this project. Like, me first. So keep making that a mantra. I think when we get on the work treadmill, it can get very easy to be like, work first, deadline first, hustle first. But if you switch it to say me first, okay, so what are some things that I can do today to make sure that I'm taken care of? Is it, I'm going to go for a run before I get on the computer. I'm going to make myself some breakfast so I actually eat today, and then get online and start doing some work. So that's really like my most accessible, easily applicable method of self-care is just, I always take that moment to say, okay, me first, what am I going to do today that's just for me?
Got it. Now we're coming up towards the end here, right? But I've got a few more questions, and y'all feel free to keep throwing them in the chat. Are you free to keep on for a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
Right. So are you open to being a mentor for any of the attendees that might be in the event?
Yes. I feel like that's only good karma. I reached out to the person that is now my mentor, and I know she's insanely busy, but she took me on, and I've been learning so much. Like, that would screw up my karma if I turned anyone down. So yes, more than happy to be a mentor.
Now, what's the best way to connect? And can you give some advice for potential mentees? Like, how can they be the best mentee, and what's the promise that you'll make to them?
Got you. Okay, so the best way to reach out is either Slack. I try to answer my Slack as much as possible. Email, I'll post my email after this. Slack and email are always fine by me. I'm not that active on LinkedIn, but if you try to get me there, I usually will respond. So yeah, Slack, email is perfect if you want to reach out. And the follow-up question was, what was it again? What can they do to be the best mentee?
Yep. And then what's your promise that you feel comfortable making to them?
Got you. I mean, I think the best mentee knows what they're looking for. If you're looking for, career advice, if you're like, hey, I'm at this level, I'm trying to get to that next level, the best mentees are self-motivated. They're not like just looking for someone to like this will be cool if we collaborate on a project. I mean, I can do that too, but I think the best mentees know where they're going, and they're just like, hey, I want to connect with someone who can help me get there. And then my promise is like, hey, I will show up and be as invested as you need me to be. Like, that's part of why I joined this community, is that I was really looking for the opportunity to network. And then, hey, I realized that I still have a long way to go and a lot to learn, but I realized, like, just through my own career path, that I have learned a lot, and I want to be able to share that with other people to empower people. So I will show up and give you every ounce of knowledge and experience that is possibly in this brain here. I'll do my best.
That's amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, again, feel free to post any questions in the chat, but we're pretty much coming up on the end here. I want to respect everybody's time. Now, there is a question in the chat about talking about what to say when reaching out to clients and what you want to work with. We did talk about that a little bit, but I think something that we did not talk about, which I think is interesting, is what's maybe the specific day of the week or something that you might reach out to a client. Do you ever do that? Do you just like reach out to clients like Saturday morning, hit them up then? When do you actually reach out to them? Because sometimes timing is everything.
That is a good point. It never really dawned on me to think about it that way, but I would take the advice that I read somewhere about interviewing and not necessarily interview, but applications. And I read somewhere it's best to like send your application in on like a Tuesday morning, because like Mondays are usually so hectic for decision makers that they're probably not going to either see it, or they'll see it and like, overlook it, and it gets lost in the shuffle. Versus like a Tuesday morning, it's still fairly early in the week, but now the crazy hecticness of Monday madness has settled in. So if you chose a day, I feel like that would be a good one. I would avoid Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just because like I have a personal client of mine that she doesn't even work. She doesn't even run her business on Fridays. Like, that's how she structures her life, is she works Monday through Thursday, and that's it. So a lot of business owners will probably like want to check out by Friday. So I wouldn't, you don't want your stuff to sit over the weekend and pile up. So yeah, let's say Tuesday.
I like that. Now, sometimes our designer minds are just buzzing. We just can't go to bed, and we have something on our minds. We just have to like write it down or whatever. Something I like to do is I like to just schedule the emails ahead of time. So if I, cause I'll have that pent up anxiety, you know what I mean? I can't go to bed and whatever. And so sometimes I'll just schedule some stuff just to go out, just so it's off my plate and I don't have to worry about it. So I like doing that. I think Gmail has that feature by default now, which is nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that.
I
Now,
like scheduling. Yeah, that's a really good one.
can you talk specifically, I guess, about maybe what's a great subject line for an email to get them to open it?
I would lead with the word creative. Everything in your tone, I mean, people get excited about creative. I've learned from enough pitching that like when we pitch for new business at my day job, when we pitch like all of the services that we offer, clients are always most excited about creative. It just that's the juicy stuff. So having creative in the title, I think is smart. Positioning it like you are a professional, like you're a professional business. I think when I reached out to my client from Oyen Handmade, I reached out to her saying, hey, wanted to discuss creative opportunities. Just leaving it like that, so it's open, so it's not like hyper specific, like, hey, I want to design a logo for you, because they might not want a logo, but they might have something else in mind, like, oh, actually we're doing a trade show and I need X, Y, and Z. So leaving it broad enough that they can kind of fill in that gap. But I would say use the word creative for sure. What was that? I see something in the chat.
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. Do you recommend taking on clients that you don't necessarily have the skills for, and you just try to get that money and then learn everything on YouTube before you have to make the actual work? What do you do?
That is a case-by-case basis. Sometimes you can be a total badass and win everything over. I've done some lucrative projects where I've learned by doing this, is that hustler mentality. It's a risky move, because sometimes you could risk over promising and under delivering if you do not really have those skills. I would say if, say, like you're just dabbling in video and like social media video, but they're like, hey, I need a bunch of social ads. If it's like a rudimentary skill, but through doing the project, if there's enough time, you can teach yourself, kind of problem solve and troubleshoot, and get them to a professional product by the end of it. Go for it, get your money. But if it's a skill that you do not have, that you're like, oh yeah, they want, I don't know, like coding, like web design and coding, and I'm an illustrator, but I want this money, that's not a good move. That's really not a good move. You can try, but I highly would not recommend it. You'll most likely tick your client off. And then, one of my other mantras from just being a freelancer and seeing how many paths that I've crossed again and again is never, ever, ever burn a bridge. So if you do stuff like this, basically, clients might feel bait and switched, and then that could be a negative relationship. And then, you've got to strike against your reputation. So you want to just be honest. If you don't have that skill set, maybe someone else in your network could do it. Maybe you can bring in someone that does have the skill and partner, but there's better ways to do it than to just tackle a project that you don't necessarily have the skills for.
That's awesome. I think we could probably end it on that note. I absolutely love it. Everything all the knowledge that you dropped, everything that we talked about, books to buy, books not to buy, blah, blah, blah. That was freaking awesome.
For sure.
I think we learned a lot. Everyone learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been real. Thank you.
Right.
Please do reach out, ping me on the Slack if you want to chat, if you want me to look at your portfolio, you want to talk, I'm down.